Welcome to UNCAGED. Today we're speaking with Candice Scarborough-Sanchez. Candice, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here today.
Now, Candice is a senior technical director at Parsons Corporation. Parsons is a really interesting business. It is a digitally enabled solutions provider and leader in many markets with a focus on national security and global infrastructure. So we'll touch on the work that Candice does at Parsons. But Candice, before we get there, let's talk about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
I think one of the things that I want people to know about me is that I'm just a true lover of technology, communication, bringing folks together and making, changes in an industry where it needs strong ideas and strong solutions. So my background starts with my software engineering background and degree that I earned from University of Maryland many decades ago. And it started there, but my love for innovation has always been throughout my life and throughout my childhood. And so I took concepts then that I felt like were fundamental to who I am and tried to pivot those into solutions and ideas throughout my career. So my career has all been about connecting the right people, finding the right solutions, and building resiliency and innovation into how we solution and how we solve problems for the communities.
And now you are at the Parsons Corporation. That's really exciting. So tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing there.
Absolutely. So at Parsons, I work in national security and operations. And specifically, my business unit is in the analytics and engineering portfolio. I have a lot of teams under me as a senior technical director, but all of my teams are focused on helping the Department of War find innovative solutions to some of our most common cyber, AI, automation problems. And so I spend all of my time with those teams trying to solution, trying to strategize, trying to set a vision for how we, answer and solve some of the challenges that our warfighters are experiencing. We want to secure, digital infrastructure. We want to secure the defense industrial base, right? All of the things that underpin making sure that we have strong national security. And so that's essentially my day-to-day, activities, just making sure that we're building resilient, scalable solutions that are built well.
It's such an interesting time in the defense space because, I'm a historian, and I come from a family of historians. My father's a American historian, and I studied Italian history. But one of the things that when you study history is that you kind of understand like how things evolve over time, and certainly, when we look at modern defense, it's gone through dramatic changes after, every 50 years. There seems to be
Yeah.
like a big shift. And right now, I feel like we're going through one of those. Like, it just seems like with everything that's going on in the world, with drones, etc., it just seems like there's such a push with how we use machine learning and how we apply these things. You know, am I correct to feel that way, or is that am I just kind of grabbing on too many media headlines?
No, absolutely. I think you're right. I think the cycles are, maybe by the decade or maybe, 10
Mm,
to 20-year cycles. I know when I first got out of college, the main thrusts around at least the defense space were we were funneling a lot of, money and infrastructure into building platforms,
mm.
large platforms. Your Lockheed Martins and your Northrop Grummons were churning out, these integrated capabilities, but more like weapons, space platforms, and systems. And a lot of money was going into building out that architecture and that infrastructure surrounding those communication plans. And then I started to see the cybersecurity shift. Right.
Mm.
When 10 years into my career as a software engineer, I was still building command and control software. I was still building, the software that talks to the weapon or the space platform. But then I started to see the shift with cybersecurity, and there were more cybersecurity roles, more cybersecurity needs. Knox and SOCs were, springing up, and these were like the network defenders. And so we started prioritizing those types of contracts and that type of work.
Hmm.
And now I'm seeing a new shift, so 10 years later, and we're seeing the modernization and the publicly accessibility of machine learning and AI. A lot of people, and maybe, I don't know, I don't want to speak for, our population or our community, but some people think AI and machine learning are new, and they're
Right.
really not. There's been the study of machine learning and AI has been around since the existence of computers. Since the
Hmm.
moment the computer was born, people were trying to figure out how to have systems learn autonomously. And if
Hmm.
you go back and look at all those old movies about AI, right, the things that came out 20 years ago or 25 plus years ago, some of those things are grounded in real concepts. But
Yeah.
now we're starting to see the public accessibility of AI, and so that is causing a boom in the applicability and
Yeah,
people's
I mean,
ability
I
to,
think it's like marrying that hardware and
yeah,
software together, right? I mean, I've done a lot of work in the machine learning space myself, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there were tests and that echo a lot of the things we have today in the early 60s,
absolutely.
but a lot of the pauses that we've had have been technical hurdles that we've
Yep.
worked through, and we're at this moment now where we're kind of seeing a lot of theory that's being put into practice because of technology. And I mean, I think the amazing thing is, how do you use machine learning, on a drone, where you have like it has to be as light as a feather.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
these are really hard technical hurdles, and
Yes.
it's quite an incredible thing that we're seeing that's happening. Now, I mean, obviously AI sits at the center of a lot of stuff, and there's so much hype around things like AI. What do you think leaders are misunderstanding about it?
I think that people are not taking the time to understand and learn, like, what are some of the limitations of AI and how to actually build the elements together to get what you want out of it.
Hmm.
Sometimes people are just throwing a model at a problem and they're not thinking about the data sets that they need to use to train the data. I tell this anecdotal story about a resume reviewer that we were trying to build in our organization, and we were just putting into the resume reviewer, and this was previous to Parsons, so it was a different engagement, but we were putting the historical hiring data that we had, it was all historical data, so it's factual, into our baselines for our model, not realizing that the data had inherent bias, right? So
Hmm.
people are just building systems, they're throwing data in it, and they don't know how that might show up and how that might lead to, adverse consequences or things that we didn't quite intend for
Hmm.
the AI to happen. So you're just deploying it and you're not really thinking about how do we deploy it so that all outcomes are equitable. Do we care about accuracy or do we care more about equitable outcomes? Things along those lines, right? And so I think that's what people are not understanding is there's some science behind it and you need to spend a little bit of time
Hmm.
understanding the science, understanding things like drift, like the model you created a year ago may not still be functioning the same way it was supposed to be. Understanding things like hallucination, like AI is still pattern matching, right? So it's going to see patterns in the data that you might not have intended it to do. And there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about that. It's not human intelligence, it's pattern matching, right? So
Yeah.
understanding things like that so that you're not creating a system that you think is going to autonomously work a certain way and you can set it and forget it.
Yeah. I mean, are you finding that, all of this new technology is shifting the way we think about product, like defense product? I think about, probably the easiest example for a layman like myself is to think about like creating a missile or something like that. Like that's I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars, but now with these products that are rolling out, they're so it seems like the pace of development has had to increase. And I
Absolutely.
imagine that things like AI play a huge role in that efficiency and the expedited kind of timelines that we're seeing.
Absolutely. We are now, our my teams alone, like we encourage the use of coding solutions with AI, right? There's guardrails that we want to put on things to make sure that people are reviewing with a fine-tooth comb everything the AI produced, doing due diligence on testing. But I mean, a UI that might have taken traditionally a week to build, you can, vibe code that, Claude code it, whatever you want, whatever tool you want to use, and you can have that same UI built in minutes, and then you spend 1 to 2 days tweaking it to get it perfectly the way that it should be, because it still needs human review. We've never deployed something without going through and line by line reviewing how the code was written.
Yeah.
But I mean, from 2 weeks to build a UI to 3 days, we
Wow.
are now churning out features much faster than before.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's shift gears a little bit here because, I mean, I want to jump back to the Candice story as well because, I mean, certainly, it's an incredible career that you've established here and you're working on very, very exciting things. But I mean, I imagine that to achieve the things that you've done, you've had to take kind of professional risks at times and things like that. Tell me a little bit how you look at that at risk. You
Yeah.
and I joked a little bit before the show because, risk is one of those things. Like if you're an entrepreneur, you know how you look at risk. If you're not an entrepreneur, how do you look at risk? And,
Right.
when you're thinking about your career, how do you weigh up those risks that really allow you to get you to the level?
Absolutely. I think the biggest risk that I've taken in my career is when I've stepped outside of my traditional DOW roles and responsibilities. So I came straight out of college. I went immediately to a defense contractor. I was
Hmm.
cleared within 2 years and immediately went into defense. And so I've been in that realm for my full career. But there were 2 times in my career where I said, I'm not learning at the speed that I think I should be learning at. I
Mm.
feel like I have friends who are outside of the, DOD or DOW as it is today that are outpacing me. So I took a chance and said, I want to start my own company. And I want to begin to build applications and solutions outside of these walls because things do move a little bit slower. The
Hmm.
security is paramount in, DOW lane. So you don't get to test all the shiny objects. You don't get to deploy all the fun things right away. You're more behind the curve. And so I said, let me step outside and see what the commercial world's doing. Let me see what are things that I can learn from my commercial partners and peers that I can bring back to my skills here doing solutions for the DOW. And I did
Hmm.
that a second time in my career. So I started I have a small boutique consulting agency. It's called CNSible Solutions, but I do, tech startups. I build apps. I
Hmm.
do a lot of things that I don't get to do in the lane of defense tech, right?
Yeah.
And then I did the same thing again. Probably 10 years later, I left the Department of War work and went commercial completely. And I worked for a bank and I went to
Wow.
Capital One. And at Capital One, I learned all of this technology, Amazon, cloud, all of my learning in terms of, my growth there. Again, commercial, the speed at which the Googles and the Amazons and the Metas deliver products and technology is very different than having your whole career supporting the defense industry.
Yeah.
And so those two risks were things that like catapulted my career once I returned back to a
Yeah, I
company.
can see that. I could see that, and I can see that. They talk about this in every field. Probably one of the easiest ways to grok it is when they talk about athletics, and
Hmm.
they say now that one of the problems that we face in the U.S. is that kids specialize on sports too
Right.
like very early now because it's
Yeah.
so competitive and how that in fact actually hurts their development because they can learn from playing other sports, like
Exactly.
there's very famous goalie, a guy named Schmeichel, and he said the reason why he was such a good goalie is that he played a different game in Denmark in the wintertime because they played a game called handball, team handball,
Hmm.
right? And so he played the game differently because of that. And I think that's true about business as well, right? We have these other experiences. It allows us to come back, iterate, evolve, move forward, come up up with new structures. And certainly in a world that's evolving so quickly, we have to embrace those things
Exactly.
because that's, there's nothing more important than security, and obviously yeah, and I understand that security has to be secure. However, we have to evolve and iterate quickly as well. So, and
Absolutely.
you have to embrace both of those things. Well,
Yeah.
Candice, if we had to look at, give you the crystal ball and tell you like what you think are going to be the key things over the next let's say next 18 months. What's on the docket for you, and what are you thinking about these days?
I think, the biggest thing that's happening, and we touched on this, the emergence of AI and
Hmm.
understanding what are the products and the solutions that are going to last and change the game when we start fusing together the existence of these, accessible technologies. So I think my teams, all of them, and I have multiple contracts underneath me, they are challenged with what is our integrated strategy to help support, the DOW. And we are on a mission to build our AI cyber workbench at Parsons. And so that I'm super excited about, because that is going to be a series of technologies, partnered together that move the needle forward. The ability to do cybersecurity engineering, digital twinning, things that'll help move, all of our customers forward with helping to understand how to secure their systems and how to protect, entities. AI is going to move the needle faster on a lot of those things. So I'm excited about what we're going to develop as an integrated strategy across all of our platforms, across all of our capabilities, and to help support all of our customer sets with one solution, because it'll have many different integrated capabilities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I said, an exciting time. And this is, I think, one of those inflection moments in the defense industry. And so I think we're going to see a totally new world emerging over the next couple of
Absolutely.
years. Lots of challenges, lots of really interesting things coming out. Candice, it's been amazing talking with you. If someone wanted to learn more about what you're working on, where's the best place to find you?
Absolutely. So I have a website. It's therealcandicesanchez.com. Candice Scarborough-Sanchez was way too long for my domain name, so it's therealcandicesanchez.com. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. Candice Scarborough-Sanchez is how you can find me on LinkedIn. And then, definitely look for me on the Parsons website. They in our analytics and engineering portfolio, which has its own page, and I can send you links for that. You can see how to get to our organization if you have a more Parsons specific question. But for me, if you want to learn more about me or engage, I do a lot of speaking events, things like that. You can find all of that on therealcandicesanchez.com.
Excellent. Well, Candice, thanks so much for being on the show today. We've been speaking with Candice Scarborough-Sanchez and been talking to her really about the defense industry and everything that's happening in that world. A lot of evolution at rapid clips are happening, I'd say, at this stage. One of the acronym of the moment applies here, which is AI, and certainly that's going to play a huge role going forward. And it's amazing to see the ways that you can kind of apply learning, I'd say, from a variety of industries and bring it back and rethink things like defense and move the needle forward. Candice, amazing to chat with you today. Look forward to chatting again, and thank you so much for being on the UNCAGED show.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you had me here, and I love this conversation. So looking forward to it again.
Cheers.